Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Zelenskyy. In a dramatic turnaround, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy reversed controversial legislation which would have placed the country's anti-corruption watchdogs under direct supervision of the executive branch. With Ukrainian lawmakers caving in under pressure from both ordinary citizens and the country's international partners, the independence of bodies tasked with battling corruption seems secure once more. But why did the government try to meddle with it in the first place? Joining us here today is Milan Lelich, political analyst for RBC Ukraine. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So let's begin by asking a fundamental question. President Zelenskyy seems to think that the decision to reverse this controversial legislation solves the issue. But is it really the case? Or are there going to be repercussions of the entire situation?
Well, basically, formally, it really does solve the issue because everything is now at the very same state of things as it used to be before all this political crisis. But I totally agree with you that there will be, definitely there will be repercussions, both internal and external. I mean, both inside the country, in our social, political life, and in our relationship with the European Union. And it's hard to say which will be more important. Like, let's start perhaps from the external relations. What my sources, both in our government and among the European diplomats I've talked during this period, they all said me that it's not all over, and now you will be really heavily monitored, really scrutinized. All the activities of your government will be under much heavier control than it used to be. Perhaps the Europeans may be a bit less flexible while discussing another tranches and conditions for all these tranches, because before that, during these 3+ years, Europe, basically the Western partners, they used to, close their eyes or pretend to close their eyes here and there. For example, Ukraine hasn't fulfilled this or that certain benchmark, but they will say, okay, we'll give you like 3 months more so that you fulfill the benchmark and receive the full amount of money. It will not be the case anymore. This is like first thing to mention. The second thing is the internal politics, and also there will be repercussions here, definitely, because this unspoken moratorium on critics on Volodymyr Zelenskyy that really was in place basically since day one of the full-scale invasion, it's not here anymore, definitely. So people understood that, okay, no one really questions his role as a president, as a supreme commander-in-chief, and all this stuff. But this all does not necessarily mean that if something wrong is done internally, in reforms, in any certain appointments on top positions and all this stuff, then the society has all the rights to react, which we have seen during these several days.
Why would you think President Zelenskyy decided to even try this? I mean, some of these consequences could have been predicted, including the fact that, once again, the global media are discussing the question of corruption in Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is a country that's fighting against corruption, right? But then you have Russia, where corruption is institutional, and Russia has gained another argument. They will be able to say, oh, look, Ukraine is corrupt, and just, drawing the attention away from the fact that they clearly have a way bigger problem with corruption, not to mention, of course, the war crimes committed in Ukraine. That's another matter altogether. Would you say that this was a strategic mistake to even try to subjugate these institutions in the first place?
Yes, it was really a strategic mistake and a strategic miscalculation in both dimensions, both the reaction inside the country and the reaction of our Western partners. Both of them were heavily miscalculated. As far as I know, what my sources say that in his circles, in Zelensky's circles, no one thought that really the West will push and react as heavy as it happened, really, as heavy as we've seen it in practice. Neither they think that our society will react like they thought, like, okay, some anti-corruption institutions with some abbreviations. Who the hell knows what the NABU and SAPO is? Like, people don't care. People care about the prices and the war and the shellings and all this stuff. They don't care about some abbreviations. No, they do. They do care. And as for the West, really, I think that also many people, some people, okay, who advised president to do this or that, they thought that, okay, 3+ years, even if we, Ukraine, do certain mistakes, that's what I've been talking about a couple of minutes ago, even if we do some mistakes, West does not really attract a lot of attention to this, even behind the closed door, as far as I know. So again, there was sort of a, as well as inside Ukraine, there was sort of an unspoken ban on critics on Zelenskyy. The same thing was basically in the West. I mean, in Western governmental circles, even behind closed doors, this is what I know from my sources, both in Kyiv, in Brussels, in other capitals, are really national leaders of the EU, NATO nations. They really tried not to criticize Zelenskyy, not even in front of the cameras. It's okay, but even behind the closed doors, because they really thought that, okay, it will give another like point to the anti-Ukrainians powers inside our countries, or it will draw all the attention away from the fact of Russian aggression, which is clearly #1 issue, not corruption, and all this stuff. So I think they calculated that this time it will also go as it used to go, but it didn't.
So now that we know that this legislation has been reversed, we may turn to other issues which are also crucial for Ukraine right now. There are now reports of the rising number of victims of another strike against Kyiv. Russia keeps pummeling Ukrainian cities and committing war crimes. Do you expect the new dynamic to actually pick up the pace when it comes to the aid to Ukraine and the pressure on Russia, which President Donald Trump recently indicated is going to be the case? He has actually reduced the number of days given to Russia to begin serious peace talks from about 50 to now about 10 days, I think, or even less than that right now. Do you think this is going to actually change anything in Russia's behavior?
Well, Trump's deadline expires on the 8th of August, and here in Ukraine, all the people really do wait for this date to see what will happen, and many officials do as well, because this is really so unpredicted. With Donald Trump, it is always unpredicted, and his deadlines used to be very, very flexible. We all know that, but still, we hope that something will change. But I think another major factor is his special envoy Steve Witkoff's travel to Russia. So today, as far as I recall, Witkoff should be in Israel, and after that, he travels to Russia, to Moscow, where he will obviously meet Vladimir Putin, I guess, and maybe deliver some messages from Donald Trump, because as of now, it doesn't seem that Russia takes all these ultimatums and threats about sanctions that have been made by Trump and his officials really very seriously. They don't. They think these are all, again, empty words, as well as Trump used to threaten them a month ago and a couple of months ago and 3 months ago and so on. So nothing big can happen. Instead, they obviously they maintain their line. They keep their line, and their line is that they think they have more than enough resources of all sorts, human resources. I mean, the cannon fodder that they can throw on our defense lines. They have the shells, they have drones, they have money, they have everything to keep waging the war and try to occupy even more Ukrainian territory. So this is their obvious goal, obvious main line of behavior. Is Trump able to change this? I think so. But really, a lot will depend on this communication between Witkoff and Putin and the messages that Steve Witkoff will bring back to Washington after this visit. And again, Trump's reactions on these messages. So this is extremely hard to predict. But here in Ukraine, yes, many people they really expect that something something may change. Well, there are not many hopes about a firm ceasefire or something as soon as next week. We all understand that these things are too complicated to be done like overnight. But still, we hope that something will change. And moreover, there are a lot of talks about the ceasefire. These perhaps a couple of next weeks. I've heard this both from different Western diplomats who work in Kyiv and from our officials, maybe the ceasefire is somehow approaching. I don't see a clear path to that. I don't see any real signs, because another heavy attack on Kyiv the night before the last one, up to 30 people dead, more than 100 wounded. So a lot is going on in Donbass and all this stuff. The Russians keep pushing our defense lines. So basically no signs of a ceasefire. But who knows? Especially with the Donald Trump in the game, you never know.
Milan Lelich was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you.
And I'm Analyst Milan Lelich. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.